Aomori, Japan, 1936. Deep within these frozen walls sat a man named Yoshie Shiratori. He was a man with a death sentence for a crime he didn't commit. Beaten, frozen, and desperate, Yoshie decided he wasn't going to wait for the executioner. His only tool? A scrap of wire was smuggled from the bathhouse. It was a support ring from a wooden bucket, but in his hands, it was a key. He had studied the guards for months. He knew there was a 15-minute gap in their patrol. It was now or never. His hands were numb, but his mind was sharp. One door down, but the prison wasn't finished with him yet. He built a decoy, a pile of floorboards under his duvet. It was a masterpiece of deception. By the time the alarm sounded the next morning, Yoshie Shiratori was long gone. This was only the beginning. Freedom lasted only 3 days. A hungry stomach leads to a careless mistake, and soon, Yoshie was back in chains. But the system was embarrassed. To punish his defiance, they didn't just lock him up. They tried to bury him alive in the belly of Akita prison. This wasn't just a cell. It was a psychological tomb. The walls were lined with sheets of polished copper, metal so cold it burned, and so smooth that even a fly would struggle to keep its footing. No bars to grip, no windows to reach. Just a tiny, sealed skylight far above. Day and night, the beatings came. The guards at Akita wanted to make an example of the magician. They forced him into back-breaking labor and left him asleep on frozen concrete. But amidst the darkness, a single light flickered. Kobayashi, the head guard. While others brought fists, Kobayashi brought respect. A quiet word, a check on his health, the only thing keeping Yoshi's soul from freezing solid. After all, Yoshie was handcuffed 24/7, even in solitary. They thought they had neutralized the man. They forgot that a caged bird doesn't stop wanting to fly. It just spends more time watching the sky. And Yoshie? He was watching the rot. June 15th, 1942. A thunderstorm screams over Akita, inside the copper tomb. Yoshie sheds his cuffs like a second skin. He turns to those unclimbable walls. With the strength of a man possessed and the grip of a lizard. One final push and the frame gives way. The rain hits his face. He's out. Again. But Yoshie didn't run for the hills. He ran to the one man he trusted. 3 months later, he appeared at Kobayashi's doorstep, disheveled, exhausted, but hopeful. He wanted to surrender, to use Kobayashi's reputation to fight for prison reform. He thought he'd found an ally. While Yoshie was in the bathroom, Kobayashi made a choice. He didn't pick up a pen to help. He picked up the phone. When the police swarmed the house, Yoshie realized the hardest lesson of all. In a world of bars and bolts, kindness is often just another trap. After the betrayal at Akita, the system stopped treating Yoshie Shiratori like a man. They started treating him like a monster. Their solution? Abashiri, the northernmost prison in Japan. A place where the wind screams like a banshee and the ground is frozen year-round. They say no one escapes Abashiri, because if the walls don't kill you, the cold will. Upon arrival, the guards tried to intimidate him. They snapped heavy iron cuffs on his wrists. Yoshie looked them in the eye, and with a roar that echoed through the cell block, he flexed. The heavy iron chain snapped like a dry twig. Fear makes men cruel. To stop the magician, they built a tomb of iron. No wood to rot, no copper to climb. His food was cut in half. His clothing was thin. He was left in a cell where the miso soup froze in seconds, and his own wounds began to crawl with maggots. But Yoshie Shiratori was a man of infinite patience. Every day, the guard slid a bowl of hot miso soup through the tiny slot in the door. And every day, Yoshie did something strange. He didn't drink at all. He saved a mouthful, not for strength, but for chemistry. Night after night, under the cover of darkness, he spat the salty broth onto the iron bolts of the shackles and the door's inspection slot. Salt leads to rust. Rust leads to rot. For 6 months, through the dead of winter, while the guards thought he was groveling like a dog, Yoshie was slowly, methodically, melting his cage with soup. August 26, 1944. The bolts finally gave up. The iron that was supposed to last a lifetime crumbled in his hands. He stripped off the 20 kilograms weights and stood tall for the first time in years. But there was one problem. The escape slot was barely the size of the man's head. Yoshie exhaled, emptying his lungs until his chest was hollow. Then one by one, he popped his shoulders, his hips, and his ribs out of their sockets. He squeezed his entire frame through a gap no wider than a dinner plate. He slid out onto the roof and vanished into the snowy mountains of Hokkaido. The guards found his cell empty the next morning. The iron was red with rust, and the invincible shackles were hollow shells. For 2 years, Yoshie became a shadow in the Hokkaido wilderness. He lived in abandoned mines and learned to hunt like the bears he observed. He wasn't a prisoner anymore. He was a ghost. But while he was hiding in the mountains, the world below was burning. When he finally descended into a nearby village, he didn't recognize his own country. English signs, American soldiers, and the news of the atomic bombs. Hunger is a cruel master. In the city of Sapporo, a starving Yoshie reached for a single ripe tomato in a farmer's field. It was a mistake that would haunt him forever. A scuffle broke out. A panicked farmer, a flash of a blade, and a life ended in the dirt. Yoshie didn't want to murder on his soul, but the law didn't care about intentions. He was back in a cage, and this time he was sitting on death row. The authorities were done playing games. 6 armed guards, 24-hour surveillance. A cell reinforced so heavily it looked like a bank vault. They even measured his skull, making sure every opening was smaller than his head. Dislocate your joints all you want, they mocked. You can't dislocate your skeleton. They kept his eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for him to try his legendary climb. And Yoshie? He obliged. He stared at that ceiling every single day, looking desperate, looking defeated. It was the ultimate misdirection. While the guard were busy watching the sky, Yoshie was looking at the dirt. Using a smuggled miso bowl and a piece of sharpened metal, he began to dig. Night after night, he pried up the floorboards, tunneled through the earth, and replaced the wood before dark. He had conditioned the guards to expect a climb, so they never thought to look down. On a cold morning in 1947, the guards flipped his duvet to find a hole in the earth and an empty room. For prisons, for escapes, the magician had done it again. A year later, an older, exhausted Yoshie sat on a bench in a quiet neighborhood. A police officer sat down beside him. Yoshie braced himself to bolt, to fight, to disappear. But the officer didn't reach for his gun. He reached for his pocket, pulled out a cigarette, and offered it to the stranger with a smile. In a world that had given Yoshie only iron and ice, this simple, expensive kindness broke him. Through tears and the haze of tobacco smoke, Yoshie Shiratori didn't just give up. He came home. He confessed his name and his history. This time, the system finally listened. The high court saw the man behind the legend, a man who never hurt a guard, a man who only wanted to be treated like a human. They revoked his death sentence, gave him 20 years, and sent him to a warm prison in Tokyo. Yoshie Shiratori served his time as a model prisoner. No more digging, no more climbing, no more miso soup chemistry. In 1961, the prison break magician finally walked through a front gate as a free man. He lived out the rest of his days in peace. A legend who proved that while you can build a cage of iron, copper, or stone, the only thing that can truly hold a man is his own heart.